Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be joined by Richard Parker of the Diomo Corporation, the Business Buyer Resource Center, and the author of How to Buy a Good Business at a Great Price series. Richard has purchased, and this number is probably a little bit out of date, 14 of his own businesses, been an advisor and broker to small business buyers and sellers for over the 3 decades. He's written and been featured in more than 300 articles on the subject of buying business in the New York Times, entrepreneurstreet.com, and is also a weekly contributor to Forbes magazine. Richard, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, let's go back in time. How did you get started? Because I don't think any kid by 9-10 years old says, I want to be a business acquisition, M&A acquisition expert when I grow up.
I'm not like any other kid. I was 12, but yes, pretty close. And so I got into business. There was a local newspaper. I grew up in Montreal, lower income, middle class area. And there was a newspaper that you could only pick up at the corner store. And it seemed odd to me that I had to go out there every Sunday early in the morning to pick up the paper from my dad. So I actually approached the publisher, Sunday Express, and said, why don't you let me deliver these papers? And they finally agreed. I went out, I solicited a lot of people. I got at least 100 to start, delivering the paper, 15 cents a piece. And then it started getting crazy. I had hundreds of papers on my route and started selling them off to local kids in the neighborhood, 100 at a time. And I would take the 2 cents per paper that the newspaper paid them, and I let them keep their tips. And my impetus for like almost franchising, if you will, was the paper used to sell for 15 cents. People used to give you a quarter, a 10-cent tip. And then they raised the price to 20 cents, but people gave you the same quarter. So my profit dropped in half. And I said, this doesn't make sense. I'll just make an override. And so that's how I got into my first business. And then they ended up selling it.
That is awesome. I love the fact that I think a lot of us, I certainly had a paper out when I was a kid, but it already existed. I love that you came up with the concept and sold them on why you should have a paper route, and then built a distribution system and had other people working for you at such a young age. Obviously shows your entrepreneurial spirit. That is awesome. How did you become you've bought 13, probably more of your own businesses and helped people for 30 years. When did you first start getting into the business of helping others get into and out of their businesses?
Okay, so great question, because it was an interesting turning point in my life. I had bought a number of businesses up into the point of the early 2000s. I lived in Montreal and I exited one of the larger ones and decided to relocate down to Florida. I know you're in Buffalo. I'm a little warmer than you are, but decided to move down to Florida. And I was looking at an acquisition down here, and it was very close. I was in the due diligence. And there was a lot of commingling between different companies that they owned. There were 3 of the 4 were for sale, but they were paying employees from one that were working for another. It's typical small business shenanigans, nothing fraudulent per se, but I just couldn't figure it out. And I always describe it was like a plate of spaghetti. The deeper I dug, the hole just kept getting deeper. I couldn't figure out if I would ever figure this out. And I told the seller that I can't go ahead with the transaction. And I remember like it was yesterday, standing outside. I was in Fort Lauderdale. I told the seller, I left their building and I'm standing in the parking lot and saying, these were the exact words in my mind. I said, the average schmuck would have bought that business. And the only reason why I didn't is because I had a number of acquisitions that I'd made and I'd looked at hundreds of businesses. I'm not that smart, but I'd been doing it a long time and looked at a lot of different deals. And so it really got me intrigued about what does the average person do who's never had owned a business, wants to buy a business. What do they do? What resources are available? And I spent a year financially. I was under no pressure. And I spent a year researching the universe of buying businesses. And I spoke to business brokers, attorneys, accountants, business owners, successful business buyers, failed business buyers, business individuals who would try to buy a business and didn't. And everything kept pointing back to the fact that there was nothing available of any value to any of these individuals that would quite literally take them by the hand through the process. And the misconception of the role business brokers play. So I decided that I was going to take all my years of experience. I kept incredible files. I said, I want to lay this out for people so that they could teach them what they need to know, what to do, and how to do it. And also the other thing that I discovered was people desperately wanted hand-holding. So some people had some knowledge, but they really came to too many situations that they aborted the project. That's why over 90% of people begin the search to buy a business, never buy one. So I said, I'm going to include hand-holding with that, or consulting. Free. I wasn't doing this for money. I just wanted to memorialize the little bit of knowledge that I had, and never thought it would turn into a business. And even the night before we launched online, my wife asked me, how many think you're going to sell? I said, if I sell one, and I help one person buy the right one or avoid buying the wrong one, it's good enough for me. I just want to memorialize this. I really, that was my intention. And here we are 20 years later with continuous updates, and we've sold over 100,000 of these and helped tens of thousands of people buy businesses. And last count is over 80 countries. So it's wild.
That is an absolutely incredible journey. And I'm sure the longer version of that story is probably hopefully in one of your books or courses somewhere. What are some of the biggest, you've done it hundreds, tens of thousands of times. What are some of the biggest mistakes people making when they try and buy a business?
The overarching biggest mistake that people make is not having an understanding of what's involved. They just go into it blind. Instead of dipping a toe in the water, they just dive headfirst into the deep end, and usually there's no water in the pool. And what I mean by that is it's not a difficult process, but it's complicated. And most people are first-time buyers. They have no knowledge, experience, expertise, track record, etc. Oftentimes no financing. And so getting a good understanding, the lay of the land of what's involved, and knowing about the different stages and process, and ramping up your knowledge base, because you've typically never done anything similar. Buying property is not even remotely close to this process. So that's the overarching theme, is knowledge, like any other project. And then the most distinct mistake that they make is they race around the internet looking at business for sale websites, trying to figure out which, if any, may be right for them. And that's the complete ass backwards way to do it. You first have to figure out, based on greatest skill set, what type of business you were born to own and operate. And then it's easy to find and buy it. So if you just have this scattered approach, nothing makes sense. But if you hone down your skills and marry your greatest skill set to what drives the revenue and profits of a business, then you can focus your search accordingly. And it's quite simple thereafter.
Okay. Now let's assume, how do I figure out what business I was born to buy or operate?
Typically speaking, people have an idea of what they think they're good at. It's usually what they enjoy, but it's not necessarily what they're good at. And you want to be able to isolate some of your skills. Sometimes it takes speaking with colleagues, workers, former bosses, clients, etc. But the easiest way to do that is to use the exact example I said that is the wrong way to go about it, is actually your laboratory, because you have tons of businesses for sale online. So let's say you're, for example, Seth, you're interested in 4 categories: commercial cleaning, home services, alarm systems, and light manufacturing. So you go online, you pick take those 4 categories, and you find 5 businesses within those categories, which you and I can find before we even get off the show because of all these websites that have business listings. And you go meet with 20 sellers, 4 categories, 5 sellers, and you go meet with 20 sellers. And then you understand, what do they do every day? What drives the business? How much employee involvement is involved? How do you grow this business? What are your greatest skill sets, etc.? And ask those key questions, which we outline specifically in the course. And you're able to hone down and say, you know what? I don't have the skill set to operate an HVAC company, but a commercial cleaning business sounds like it's for me, because my greatest skill is managing people. And that's what that business is. That's what that business requires the most, the single most important skill set. And so you do it through a process of elimination. The goal is to go like from a shotgun to a laser beam. And then once you say, okay, Commercial cleaning or alarm businesses match my skill set. Then you just focus your attention on those only, whether it be online or direct solicitations, which is a huge part of it, but it's not scattered. It's uber focused. And there's so many businesses and every business wants to exit at some point. So the process, the crazy part, deal flow is a challenge, but not once you know what it is that you want to buy, there's millions of them.
That's really insightful. And obviously, it took you a while to figure that out. The
Yes.
majority of our audience are entrepreneurs. So let's talk about the strategic acquisition process of how we grow by acquisition and how we make sure that we're not buying somebody else's nightmare and instead we're acquiring something that's going to add to and complement what we've already got.
So there's a couple things to consider because it's a phenomenal growth strategy. Organic growth is romantic, it's interesting, fun, but nothing. I built my whole basis of businesses on the theory of growing through acquisition. You have two paths to go down. You could buy out competitors, or you can buy complementary businesses. For example, you're up in the Northeast, you're in the landscaping business. You may want to buy a snow removal business. You're in the landscaping business, but you're doing the mow, blow, and go type of cutting, and you may want to buy a tree trimming business. So or other landscaping companies. So you have your competition, or you have ancillary businesses that you can bolt on with the concept that if you can add more product that you can sell to the same customer base that you already have, people are inclined to buy from the same people if they're reasonably happy with them. And adding on services to your existing business, ancillary or competitive, is a great way to go. Now, to your second question related, how you know you're not buying someone else's crap, especially when you're dealing with a competitor. At the beginning, you got to develop some trust between the two of you because they're individual trade secrets, but you have the basis of knowing what a good business looks like in your industry. So the most important thing that you have to figure out, assuming that there's revenue and profits there, the single biggest thing you got to figure out is there going to be a cultural mesh here? Or is it going to be a cultural disaster? Meaning after you integrate their people and systems, what have you, is it going to work? So you really need to get deep into the philosophical part of how these two companies are going to come together. And sometimes it makes sense to keep running them independently. So you've got to take your time when you're growing through acquisition to make sure that the company fits. The easy part, the numbers are the numbers. They don't lie. People lie. That's the easiest part to figure out. It's the other pieces related to the employees, the staff, the integration, the customer continuity, those type of things that you've got to analyze to make sure they're going to mesh like this. It's not going to be confrontational. But I will tell you that once you get the understanding of how to do this, you cannot just grow your business. You can explode your business. Because I would bet that any one of your listeners sitting down or listening to us today can identify 5 to 50 companies, depending on their industry and geography, that they could potentially acquire. That would make a fit, at least from the standpoint of it makes sense to buy that type of company. So it's an enormous opportunity.
Awesome. And then on the flip side, I think I saw a statistic on your website, something like 90% of businesses never sell. What are some of the biggest mistakes we make when it comes time to exit our businesses?
It's actually 90% of buyers don't complete a transaction. 75% of the businesses listed on publicly listed businesses for sale websites do not sell. And there's a number of reasons. Poor books and records. Number one, by far, the buyer and their team can't evaluate the numbers. Overpriced. What a seller thinks is worth rarely has anything to do with the value. Then there's processes, procedures, systems, and people. Meaning, you take your business to market that you want to sell it. The goal is to have the largest pool of prospective buyers possible who can buy that business. If you can't demonstrate that this business can transition to a new owner operator because your failure to put in the right systems, their learning curve is too steep, or you are the business, you're a micromanager, you haven't empowered employees to let them do their job. Think of it from a standpoint, if you as a business owner get hit by a Pepsi truck tomorrow, can someone else come in and run this business with a relatively short learning curve? If your answer is not a resounding yes, you have not put systems and processes into place to make your business sellable. It's unavoidable. It's not going to happen. Because if you were looking to buy a business, you want to make sure that after a few months, you can run that thing. But if it's all over the place, I'd say, look, I'll never figure this out. So getting good books and records, policies, procedures, and systems in place, the right people, and making sure that it can transition. Any problem that you have in your business that you perceive as a concern is going to be multiplied to the power of 10 in the eyes of a buyer because they have no experience.
That makes a lot of sense. Talk a little bit about the book and the course.
Okay, thank you. It's called How to Buy a Good Business at a Great Price. And it walks people through the 23 steps in the business buying process, right from things that you need to consider before you even get into this, right through to post-purchase priorities and what you could do, what you should do the first 90 days, and covers dealing with business brokers, where to look for businesses, how to look, negotiations, valuations, due diligence, hiring professionals, the full gamut. The one thing that we did from the beginning is, and sometimes people find this hard to believe, and to them I say, I don't really care what you think, is I did this to help people. I've never changed our goal in the business. That's been our driving factor. It's never been driven financially. It's grown way beyond my wildest expectations. But one of the most important things that we add to the information is you can email me anytime and I will answer your questions along the way. If you need to get on a call, I just jumped off a call with a client who's looking at a business in Pennsylvania, and had a 30-minute call and prepped him for the call and went through the questions again and make sure he was good and straightened away, so that we provide free, ongoing, unlimited consulting to individuals. The material, we sell the whole package for $197. And I know from my own experience, I've been screwed. I bought some information products that were just garbage. They weren't worth the paper they were written on. And it was very disappointing because it rarely, with website hype, does it live up to the expectation. So we give people an unlimited guarantee. At any point in time, now and forever, as long as I'm alive, and hopefully the company will still be surviving after I'm gone from this earth, you could return this anytime. I want people to be thrilled with the information.
That is an incredible offer, and we know your time is greatly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us. Where is the best place for our people to go to learn more about you and all things that you're doing?
Go to richardparker.com. Everything is there. Free articles, reports, tons of information. And of course, our course is available there as well. And I really appreciate you having me today.
Our pleasure. This has been Seth Greene with Richard Parker from richardparker.com and Diomo. Richard, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.